Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and today's video is about the Arceuus Spellbook Rework, which is currently being pulled on OSRS. The Arceuus Spellbook has been one of, if not the least used spellbook since it was released. It's really just all about using your ensouled heads for prayer XP, and there's a couple helpful teleports, but Jagex is proposing some added spells to the book, which could make it a lot more useful. My goal in this video is to just discuss the poll, not lean your vote one way or the other. I just want to give you all the information about the rework so you can make your own decision. Also, there's a pretty good chunk of spells on this list, so I might speed through a couple of them just to make this video not take forever. First of all, Jagex is looking to add a new quest called a Kingdom Divided, which is going to continue the current quest line in Zeah. It's supposed to be an experience level quest, meaning that it won't be a joke to complete, but it's also not going to be nearly as hard as like Monkey Madness 2 or Dragon Slayer 2 by any means. They've given a couple of spoilers on what we should expect for the rewards and what the requirements are for the quest, including all of the previous Zeah quests and a few mid to low level requirements. The first question in the poll is about the quest getting into the game, and it's going to have to pass for really any of the other changes to make it in. I imagine getting the quest into the game is going to be a little bit easier than adding any new mechanics that they're looking at, and to be fair, not every question on the poll says if we add a Kingdom Divided, so some of these changes could exist without the quest, but most of them wouldn't get in without it. First of all, they're looking to rework how the current reanimation spells work. At the moment, there is a different spell for every type of ensouled head that you get as a drop, which fills up the majority of the spellbook. Jagex would rather make this 4 different spells, a low, mid, high, and master level version of it. Each spell would work on about a quarter of the ensouled heads, mostly just to free up space for other new spells, but it would make the spellbook a little bit less scattered and more organized. The next spell they want to update is the Lumbridge Graveyard Teleport, which apparently isn't used very often since it's not a very far run from just like a Lumbridge teleport on the regular spellbook. They propose to change this spell to teleport you north of the Arceuus Library on Zeah. This does make a little bit more sense since the Arceuus Spellbook would then have a teleport to the Arceuus area there, but it's also pretty close to an already existing fairy ring north of the library, so it might remove the need to purchase access to that ring for some players, or maybe if you didn't have the Elite Lumbridge Diaries and you're looking to not bring a Drahman staff around for whatever reason, it would give a different option for traveling to Zeah. After the questions about changing spells that are currently in the spellbook, we've then got some new spells to check out, which I'll first go over the grasp spells. These are very similar to binding spells. There's 3 different levels of grasps: the Ghostly Grasp, Skeletal Grasp, and Undead Grasp. Each higher level spell gives a larger chance to stop your opponent in place, similar to that binding spell, and the Undead Grasp lasts twice as long as the 2 lower level ones. The thing is, the Undead one would still only last for 4 ticks, so it's definitely a lot worse than binding spells for how long you stay in place, but they also do damage. The base max hit on Undead Grasp would be 24, making these a more interesting option for binding spells, but also giving them less of a chance to get into the game, since voters love to vote no to anything that might possibly be used by a PKer. These spells could potentially be used for some PvM situations, but I imagine it's a little bit leaned towards PvP. You would have to do Kingdom Divided for the 2 higher level spells, but for the Ghostly Grasp, you don't need the quest. Next, we have Resurrection Spells, which I feel have been kind of missing from the Arceuus Spellbook forever. We've always had these Reanimation Spells to get prayer XP, but why not bring things back to life to fight for us, kind of Necromancer style? There are 3 Resurrection Spells listed, basically 1 for each attack style. The highest level monster you'd be able to resurrect is a zombie, which would use melee attacks, having a max hit of 3, and attacking at the speed of a whip. As far as I can tell, you would be able to resurrect multiple monsters at a time, but these spells and their exact mechanics are subject to change. A resurrected thrall is going to last for longer if you have a higher magic level. They stay spawned for 1 game tick for every magic level that you have when you cast the spell. Each of these spells would also drain a little bit of prayer when they're used, 6 prayer points for using the high level spell a single time. This would add a little bit different strategy when using your magic spells, but also it means you couldn't quite spam resurrection for low cost, making a giant army of undead monsters to kill anything for you. If resurrection spells did get into the game, they would also be adding the Book of the Dead, which is an upgraded version of your Caradus memoir, a book that not very many people use from the Zeah area, giving a +6 magic boost and +3 prayer boost. The Book of the Dead may not seem like a very powerful spell book, but apparently it is going to be required to even use a resurrection spell. Next, we have the Demon Bane spells, which do exactly what they sound like they would do, a lot of damage to demons. In fact, they would only be able to be used against demons, no other monsters. The lowest level Demon Bane spell would not require the quest, but the other 2 would require a Kingdom Divided to be complete. The Dark Demon Bane has a base max hit of 30, which is the base max hit of a Fire Wave if you're wielding a Tome of Fire, so the attack has a lot of potential. There's not a ton of demons that you use magic against, but it would be interesting to see what it does to like a Zami fight or the Abyssal Sire or something like that maybe. In terms of killing demons, there's another poll question coming up later that could affect this one a lot. In fact, a couple of poll questions that could lead back to this. Next, we have the first skilling spell that they're looking to add to the spellbook, the Shadow Veil spell. Shadow Veil is going to give a 15% chance to dodge a stun while pickpocketing NPCs. This is like a dodgy necklace, though a little bit less effective, but it stacks with a dodgy necklace for up to 40% chance to dodge a pickpocket stun. It's pretty cheap cost in runes, and the spell is going to have the same mechanic as Resurrection, where it lasts for longer if you have higher magic, so it could potentially be a huge boost for many thieving methods like Vyres, Elves, Zars, and even Arty Knights when you're training up to 99 thieving. Next, we've got the Dark Lure. Dark Lure is a little bit different than a binding spell. Using this spell on an NPC that normally flees from a fight, like an imp, is going to stop the opponent from fleeing. They also state not only will this work on implings, but in fact it'll make the implings approach you, which could be an insane boost to impling hunting in Puro Puro. Outside of that, I'm not sure I see a full use for these. Maybe when fighting a crappy ghoul task northwest of Canifis. Those things always run away right before you kill them, leading to another one attacking you. The Mark of Darkness will be pulled on question 8 on the poll. Using a Mark of Darkness on your target will mark it with darkness. Pretty cool. An opponent marked by darkness will take more damage from Demon Bane spells, making the Dark Demon Bane base like 37 to 38 damage. Plus, those spells are more accurate, and grasping spells would be twice as effective on a marked target, making them a little bit more useful. The Mark of Darkness will also double the effect of Corruption, which is a new mechanic being pulled in the next question. Corruption spells will have the ability to inflict corruption on an enemy, which is going to be a new mechanic similar to like poison or venom, but in this case it's going to lower your opponent's prayer points rather than your health over time. A player who is corrupted will lose 1 prayer point after 6 seconds, 2 prayer points after another 6 seconds, and then 3 prayer points after the final 6 seconds, which apparently the pace of that will be doubled if they are marked with darkness first, but I don't know if the amount of prayer points that get drained keep increasing after 3. Honestly, after reading this a couple times, I'm not even 100% sure if it keeps increasing the amount of prayer points that it drains, or if it's just draining 1 point every 6 seconds. This effect will last 18 seconds per cast. There'll be 2 different spells that could inflict corruption, a lesser corruption giving a 33% chance, and a greater corruption giving a 66% chance to land. If the question passes, corruption will only be really a PvP mechanic, since it can only be cast by a player, and then really on another player, since no monsters really have prayer points that you drain. But I could see this for a new boss, like inflicting corruption on you, making your prayer points drain. But also, there could be a boss where you have to use a corruption spell to turn their overheads off. These first couple corruption spells, I don't see them being insanely helpful, but there is a lot of potential for this mechanic. Next, we have Vile Vigor, which I think is the most interesting but also simplest spell in the book. For 1 soul rune and 3 air runes, you can turn all of your remaining prayer points into run energy. This would turn altars around the world into potential resting places for players to instantly restore their run energy for far cheaper than a stamina. While obviously not giving the same stamina effect, it still could bring an interesting add-on to many skilling methods in the game. Next, we have the Cleanse spell, which would clean a full inventory of herbs for you. The spell would only require 3 seconds to cast and cost like 500 coins max, so it potentially could be a good moneymaker out the gate, but also has potential for lowering the price gap between clean and grimy herbs. This would get rid of a lot of the need to click like a madman while cleaning large amounts of herbs, which is very nice on the wrist. Next up, we have the Ward of Arceuus. Ward of Arceuus is like the opposite of Mark of Darkness. Rather than using the spell on an opponent to strengthen the effects of your next spells, the spell gives you some sort of protection. While you're protected by the ward, you're immune to corruption, grasp spells only last for a single tick, and the damage that you take from demon monsters is reduced by 10%. This includes Krill, the Zami boss, which really has some solid knockout potential in the first place. So I think the initial goal of this spell is more to protect yourself from other players that are using the updated book, but the wildest use is that reduced damage from demons. That could be a very solid way to extend some PvM trips. Next, we have the Death Charge spell. If you have casted Death Charge in the last 60 seconds, your next kill on a monster is going to recharge your special attack energy by 15%. This can only be done once per cast, so if you cast it at one time, kill a monster 5 seconds later, then the next 55 seconds you won't be able to gain any special energy from kills, and you can't cast Death Charge again. You can only cast it once every 60 seconds. The Death Charge could be used to make a big difference in bossing trips that require specs like a Dragon Warhammer or BGS. Even things like a Sarah Godsword spec could be used a lot more often, potentially lengthening your trips. The last spells that we have on the list are offerings, the Sinister Offering and the Demon Offering. First, the Sinister Offering is going to turn up to 3 sets of bones in your inventory into prayer points. This is similar to like wearing a dragon bone necklace and burying the bones, being able to restore prayer points without using potions or an altar. It would be only 1 point for most bones, or 2 prayer points for Hydra, Dagonoth, Org, and Superior Dragon bones. You could also receive 3 times the normal XP you get from burying bones, and the spell takes 3 seconds to complete, making this a potential prayer training method too. Demonic Offering would be like Sinister Offering, but instead working with Demonic Ashes, which by themselves would be a new mechanic. If you have played RS3, I think even before it was RS3, then you probably have used Demonic Ashes before. This would make monsters that currently drop regular ashes instead drop versions of those ashes that could be used to train prayer. They would work just like bones, giving higher tier ashes for higher level monsters. This would make for an actual use for those ash drops from demons, but overall it would be adding a lot when it comes to prayer training. That's it on the new spells that they have pulled, but there's a very interesting question that was snuck into the poll, kinda. Question 19 asks if Hellhounds should drop demonic ashes rather than bones, as long as those demonic ashes get into the game in the first place. Since Cerberus is a Hellhound, this would mean Cerberus would become a demon too, making Demon-Bane spells, the Ward of Arceuus, and the already existing Arclight effective against the Hellhound boss. I don't know exactly how effective, or if this will be a new fastest method at Cerberus, necessarily, but I do feel like it could be a very big change if this one gets in. Lastly on the poll, we do have an area rework for Shayzien. Jagex has slowly been rearranging, filling in, and just generally updating and populating the landmass of Zeah, which is better than dumping 3 or 4 years of updates on us all at once on the release of Zeah, which apparently players expected in the first place. The area updates do look like they'll make Shayzien House a little bit more filled up with stores and mobs, and overall designed more like the theme of other towns around Galenor. The main thing that I want to talk about, though, is the possible new agility arena. This new arena would have 2 different areas to it. The first area would only require 5 agility, so it could be a different place for early level agility. I'm a pretty big fan of that because I feel like there's way more options for high level agility than low level agility, but to be fair, you spend more time leveling up at higher levels, so it makes sense to have more options, change things up a little. The first course would apparently be about 8.5k agility XP an hour. The second part of the course would require 48 agility and give up to 30k XP an hour, which is actually pretty filthy for that level of agility. It also doesn't give any marks of grace though, so it would be a faster option without working on your graceful outfit. Graceful is very great to have. It's really one of the best outfits to get in the game, so I'm not sure how much I would skip over the marks myself. But overall, this agility course does look like it would be useful, making it not necessarily dead content on arrival, but also not be broken by any means, being surpassed by the Seer's course in XP per hour, but also not giving any bonus loot while you're there. Overall, I think that's everything I wanted to go over when discussing this poll and the Arceuus Spellbook Rework. This poll is currently live, so go ahead and vote on it if you've got any opinions on it, or maybe you're watching this video later down the road, and we already know whether or not some of this stuff is getting into the game. If any of this does pass, I will make a video checking out the new things that make it into the game once the update happens. Thank you very much for watching this video, everybody. If you enjoyed or you just got some useful information out of it, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. I do stream on Twitch, which should be linked on the screen and in the description. I'm also on Twitter. I do have a Discord, which are linked in the description. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and best of luck on your grinds.